Hi students, how are you? Hopefully you're good. Now we are coming into the next unit, the next lesson, in which the lesson is talking about explaining ideas and visual information. And as usual, we are going to come first on the concepts. The topic is about how to present visual information. How to present visual information to other people. Why visual information is necessary? Because a lot of presentations are focused on data and numbers, so it sounds boring for listeners. So that's why visual information can help us draw and keep attention of listeners, because people are more interested to visual information. That's the concept. Now we are coming into something specific. We are going to learn about the type of graph, the type of visual information. There are some. The first one is bar graph. This is the example of the bar. Okay. So the bar graph are used to show relationships between different data series that are independent of each other. The relationships. So we are going to see about the vertical axis, the data here, and compared to this horizontal axis. Okay, so the height and also the length of the bar indicates the measured value or frequency. The next one is about line graph. Line graphs represent how data has changed over time. You see the point here, for example, change into this one, and then coming into another change, and etc. up to the last one, and it comes into the peak or the top, and then lowest points. This is how the data change. Okay, but the concept of the vertical axis and horizontal axis is the same. That depends on the data you are going to present. Okay, the next one is pie charts. Pie charts are designed to visualize how a whole is divided into various parts. So for example, this is the whole one, okay, and it is divided into Chrome. So for example, this is about the desktop browser market share in 2016. So Chrome 61%, and then Internet Explorer, Firefox, and other. And other is specifically visualized by this one. Okay, so it means that the pie chart is going to visualize how a whole divided into parts. That's for example. Okay, that's the simple concepts. Now I think we are going to come directly into the language expressions or phrases. Here are the phrases or language expressions you are going to have when you try to introduce the topic. You can see that. You can read it by yourself. This is the next one. Let me show you this bar graph. I would like you to look at this map and etc. Okay, if this is important for you, you can try to have a capture for this. Now, introducing the graph Okay, when we come into the body of presentation, exactly that you are going to describe also, you try to introduce first about the axis. For example, for the very first, the vertical axis shows about, for example, or the horizontal axis represents the colored segments is for, then etc. You can see and you can read that. Or these, the graph gives information about, or the table provides information about, or the bar chart describes, the bar chart represents, and etc. You can choose one of them. Now let's come into the vocabularies. There must be vocabularies, special vocabularies that you are going to use. And when you see the sample of the graph, the types of the graph, you see about the upward trend and downward trend. Okay, there are some vocabularies you may choose. For example, for the upward trend, you can have increase or rise, go up, and etc. Okay, it's going to be the opposite one, downward trend. You can have decrease, fall, or go down, decline, and to drop. Right, if the data has big changes, so from low points into bigger points, you can have dramatically, you can insert these vocabularies. Dramatically, sharply, suddenly, significantly, drastically, for example. But if the interval from one point into another one only has a small change, you can also have these words: gradually, slightly, gently, moderately. For example, the number of students in 2019 has slightly different number from blah blah blah, from A to B, for example. Mention about the number. If there are no change of the points, you can have remain the same or remain constant, remain stable. Okay, or it stays at the same level, you can say that. And then if there are such kind of frequent change, you can have this vocabulary fluctuate, or it has a fluctuation on the points, on the numbers. So these are the vocabularies that you will use, that you will have when you are trying to explain about the visual information. And also about this one, if it comes into the top, you can say it reaches a peak, or it comes into the highest point. In the opposite side, if it is at the bottom, it hit a low point. It hit the lowest point. Right, now how to describe? Exactly, in any visual information, whatever the data is, you are going to start with the introduction, and then comes into the presentation of the data, okay, and also coming into the last one, it means that it is about conclusion or summary. So starting with the introduction. Introduction explains what the chart is about, for example, and a kind of overview of the main points. The presentation of the data exactly that you are trying to explain and show the connection, showing the relationship between, for example, X and Y. Try to see the similarities and find also the differences. Lastly, you have to provide a short summary conclusion. In order to be clear, I'm going to give you the steps to present. There are 9 steps. Started from the very first, it comes into the greeting. For example, good morning, okay, or good afternoon, for example. And then after that, you are trying to give the introduction related to the topic of discussion. And then explaining what visual information is about. So it comes into the introduction also. And then don't forget the purpose of explaining this, the purpose of describing or informing about this data. And then after that, you come into the notes on questions, the notes for responding. For example, do you want that the listeners or other people wait until the end of a presentation, or they may ask you, interrupt you at any time? So you would be better to state that at the very first before you come into the presentation. Then you come into the presentation. First of all, exactly that you have to explain about the axis, vertical axis or horizontal axis. And then that can be also about the color, because for the visual information, it's going to be helped by the color also in order to be better for the audience to see the difference. And then after that, you have to present about the data, the numbers. Don't forget to provide also the reasons, for example, or what to pay more attention. And then the last one, try to come into the summary or conclusion and closing. Understandable? Hopefully these steps can be followed and can be, you can apply these steps better. Okay, let's come to the practice. Look at this bar chart. Try to see this carefully. And we are going to practice about 9 steps I mentioned before. Started from the greeting, introduction to topic, and then number 3, you explain about what kind of visual information is about. Don't forget about saying or stating about the purpose. And then after that, notes on responding, whether the audience has to wait until the end of presentation or they may interrupt you at any time. And then after that, try to explain about the axis, horizontal and also vertical axis. And then after that, the data presentation. The next one is about summary or conclusion, and the last one, closing. Let's try. I give you the sample. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for coming. Engineering is one of the subjects chosen by the students to take in Australian universities. Engineering becomes favorite subject to learn in Australia. However, There are different numbers of students studying engineering in Australian universities in 20 years' time. Therefore, to illustrate my points, let's look at the following bar charts. The bar chart illustrates the number of men and women studying engineering at Australian universities between the years 1992 and 2012 at 10-year intervals. The presentation hopefully gives you a few points on how to do more promotion for students to study engineering. Besides, the data can be another reference for us to see the trends between men and women taking engineering. If you have any questions, please hold until the end of my presentation. Well, let's have a look at these charts. The vertical axis shows us the number of students studying engineering, and the horizontal axis represents the year at 10-year intervals or decade, studied from 1992, then 2002, and 2012. The blue bar is about male students, and the red bar represents female students. It can be seen that the number of male students decreased slightly from 14,000 in 1992 to 12,000 in 2002, and then remain constant through the following decade. On another side, the number of female students is relatively low, starting at 2,000 in 1992. This bar chart describes us that while the number of men studying engineering decreased, surprisingly, the number of women increased. Female students grew steadily by 2,000 each decade. This led to a rise in the total number of engineering students. Total number of engineering students from 16,000, the accumulation of these men and women, to 18,000 in 2012. Other things to outline: first, male students still becomes the majority or taking bigger numbers than female. Second, in 2012, the number of female students increased sharply. Talking about the data of female students, we can see that in 1992, there was one woman to every 7 men. You see the comparison here? Okay, 2000 compared to 14,000. But by 2012, this had narrowed to one woman to every 2 men. In conclusion, from 1992 to 2012, or during 20 years' time, we can see a clear upward trend in the number of female engineering students in Australian universities, while the number of male students seems to decline. Well, ladies and gentlemen, this is the end of my presentation. Thank you for listening. I think now is the time for us to have open discussion. So if you have any questions, please raise your hand. Thank you. Alright, so that's the sample of giving visual information. So we are trying to give clear idea about the graph. Okay, and because this is about numbers, you can see about the similarities and the differences. You may also do comparison and conclusion. Alright students, I think we may come into the practice time. Like usual, would you please try to look at sample of conversation in the handout and some other things there. And then after that, try to practice by yourself first and then practice it with anyone you are comfortable with. And don't forget, develop and elaborate the conversations. And for the next meeting, I will check and see the progress of your speaking ability, like usual, from the following graph stated on this video. So after this slide, I will give you the graph that you are going to present, you are going to prepare. Okay, try to prepare it to present the visual information and do conversation. And one note from me, do not read the script while explaining. And another student listens and raises questions related to the explanation given. Once again, you can see the sample of the conversation from your handouts, and you can try to see the sample of how to present visual information coming from this video. This is the graph. You can take a capture on this. This is the graph of the nicest fruit. It's already stated there about the vertical axis and also horizontal axis, and also the bar completed with the color in order to be able for you to get easy to describe. Okay, I think that's all for today. Thank you very much. Good luck. Happy practicing.